One war that changed everything. A superpower brought to its knees, not by another army but by farmers in black pajamas, by tunnels beneath the earth, by a will that could not be broken. This is not just another war story. This is the story of how America learned that firepower alone cannot win hearts, and how 58,000 American sons never came home. This is Vietnam, 1954. The French are defeated at Dien Bien Phu, and Vietnam is divided along the 17th parallel. In the north, Ho Chi Minh's communist government dreams of reunification. In the south, a fragile democracy backed by American money and American promises. The theory was simple, seductive, and wrong. If Vietnam falls to communism, all of Southeast Asia will follow like dominoes. And so America stepped into a war that wasn't theirs, a war they didn't understand. August 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, 2 American destroyers allegedly attacked by North Vietnamese patrol boats. But what really happened in those dark waters? The truth would remain murky, but the response was crystal clear. Congress grants President Johnson unlimited military power in Vietnam. No declaration of war, just permission. By 1965, 184,000 American troops are deployed. By 1968, over 500,000 young Americans are fighting in the jungles 7,000 miles from home. Imagine this. You're 19 years old, drafted from a small town in Ohio or Alabama. Now you're in a jungle so thick you can't see 10 feet ahead. The enemy could be anywhere, in the trees, under the ground, disguised as a farmer in the rice paddy. The Viet Cong didn't fight like any enemy America had faced before. No uniforms, no front lines, no pitched battles. They emerged from tunnels, set booby traps that ripped bodies apart, then vanished like ghosts. The jungle itself became the enemy. Leeches, malaria, monsoon rains that turned the earth into sucking mud. And every day the question haunted them, why are we here? Beneath the battlefields, the Vietnamese built an entire world. Over 250 kilometers of tunnels, hospitals, sleeping quarters, kitchens, weapons factories, all underground. American soldiers called themselves tunnel rats, volunteers who crawled into these underground labyrinths armed only with a pistol and a flashlight. Imagine descending into darkness, not knowing if you'd emerge alive. Many didn't. The Vietnamese lived down there for months, years even, while B-52 bombers turned the world above into a moonscape. America dropped more bombs on Vietnam than all of World War II combined. But you can't bomb an idea. You can't bomb the will to be free. January 30, 1968. Tet, the Vietnamese New Year, a time of celebration and ceasefire. But at midnight, the ceasefire shattered. 80,000 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese soldiers launched simultaneous attacks on over 100 cities and towns across South Vietnam. They even breached the walls of the American embassy in Saigon. Militarily, Tet was an American victory. The attackers were pushed back with heavy losses. But something had broken. When the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite, told viewers the war was unwinnable, President Johnson knew it was over. "If I've lost Cronkite," he said, "I've lost Middle America." March 16, 1968, the village of My Lai. What happened there would become the darkest stain on American honor. American soldiers, under orders, entered the village searching for Viet Cong fighters. But there were no fighters, only civilians, old men, women, children, bobbies. 504 Vietnamese civilians were massacred that morning. One American helicopter pilot, Hugh Thompson, landed his aircraft between his fellow soldiers and fleeing villagers, ordering his crew to shoot any American who tried to harm them. A hero stopping a massacre by his own countrymen. When the news broke in 1969, America recoiled in horror. How had their boys become this? The war wasn't just fought in Vietnam. It raged on American streets, on university campuses, in family living rooms. "Hell no, we won't go," they chanted. Young men burned their draft cards, fled to Canada, chose prison over war. At Kent State University in 1970, National Guardsmen opened fire on student protesters. 4 dead, 9 wounded. America was shooting its own children. A nation divided like never before since the Civil War. Veterans returning home weren't greeted as heroes. They were spat upon, called baby killers, forgotten. The whop 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 of helicopter blades became the soundtrack of Vietnam. The Belle A-1 Iroquois, the Huey, defined this war. Air cavalry, medevac missions, supply drops, rapid insertion and extraction. For many soldiers, the Huey meant salvation, a ride out of hell. But helicopters are fragile things in a war zone. Over 5,000 were shot down or destroyed. Yet they kept flying, pilots barely old enough to buy a beer back home, making impossible rescues under fire. The bravery was extraordinary, but bravery alone couldn't change the inevitable. Operation Ranch Hand, only you can prevent forests. From 1962 to 1971, the U.S. military sprayed nearly 20 million gallons of herbicides over Vietnam. Agent Orange, Agent Blue, Agent White, rainbow poisons designed to strip away the jungle canopy to expose the enemy. But chemicals don't discriminate. Millions of Vietnamese were exposed. So were American soldiers walking through the mist, drinking the water. Decades later, children are still being born with devastating birth defects. Veterans dying of cancers the government denied for years. The poison remains, generation after generation. Some weapons wound not just bodies, but the future itself. April 1975. After years of negotiations, after all American combat troops had withdrawn, the North Vietnamese Army launched its final offensive. The South Vietnamese Army, so long propped up by American support, crumbled. City after city fell. And then, April 30th, the American embassy in Saigon. Desperate crowds pressing against the gates. Helicopters on the roof, evacuating the last Americans and select Vietnamese. Some climbed the walls, clinging to landing skids. Many were left behind. By afternoon, communist tanks crashed through the gates of the presidential palace. The war was over. America had lost. 58,220 American names carved in black granite in Washington, D.C. But the numbers tell only part of the story. Over 300,000 American wounded. 150,000 Americans suffered severe psychological trauma. On the Vietnamese side, estimates vary wildly, perhaps 3 million dead, soldiers and civilians combined. An entire generation scarred. For what? The dominoes never fell. Vietnam was reunified under communist rule, yes. But decades later, they're America's trading partner, a tourist destination. The war that tore America apart, that killed millions, that poisoned the land. Had it all been for nothing? Vietnam changed America forever. It shattered faith in government, the credibility gap between what officials said and what was really happening. It ended the draft, making military service voluntary. It made America hesitant to commit ground troops, until it didn't. The lessons of Vietnam. That firepower without purpose is meaningless, that you cannot win a war without understanding why you're fighting, that the will of a people cannot be broken by bombs alone. But perhaps the hardest lesson, that young people sent to fight wars deserve more than noble lies. They deserve truth. They deserve to know that their sacrifice means something. Michael Thompson was 20 years old when he arrived in Vietnam in 1967. He was a door gunner on a Huey, flew over 200 missions. Every day I was terrified, he says. Every day I saw friends die, and every day I asked myself why we were there. No one could give me an answer that made sense. Michael came home in 1969. He didn't speak about Vietnam for 30 years. Nightmares, survivor's guilt, the feeling that he'd left part of himself in those jungles. The war ended in 1975, he says, but for those of us who were there, it never really ends. 50 years later, he visits the wall, touches the names of friends who didn't come home, and he weeps for the boys they were and the peace they never found. Wars end, but their echoes last forever. Vietnam today is a country of 100 million people, young and vibrant and looking toward the future. The children and grandchildren of those who fought on both sides live without the burden of that conflict. Former enemies are now friends. But we must remember not to glorify war, but to understand its cost. 58,000 American dreams ended in rice paddies and jungles. Millions of Vietnamese lives destroyed. All those names, all those lives, all those futures never lived. The war America lost taught us that the greatest victories are the wars we never fight. In memory of all who served and all who suffered, may their sacrifice teach us the price of war and the value of peace.